Islamist protesters in Pakistan's capital have lifted their siege of parliament after claiming that some of their demands have been met. The standoff comes in the context of last Sunday's suicide attack on a children's playground in the capital, in the largest city, Lahore. Let's cross now to Rizwan Syed for the latest. Rizwan, the sit-in is over.
Yes, it is. It has been confirmed by the Interior Minister. Now, the actual protest itself was led by a coalition of Islamic political parties and groups under the Tehreek-e-Laibak Ya Rasool. That is the name of the coalition. Now, what's interesting is that the government set a number of deadlines for protesters to basically stop protesting and withdraw, and the deadlines kept being extended. Now, in terms of what actually happened, today was fairly peaceful. On Sunday, when the protest started, a bus station was torched, a few containers were torched, and stones were thrown at the police. But this has become quite peaceful over the past few days. The logic being, this is because they didn't have access to much supplies. There was an overwhelming show of force by the government, and there was also, they weren't given shelter or tents or anything, so they quietened down over time.
We saw that the protesters claim that the government has agreed to their demands, most notably the execution of a Christian woman, Asia Bibi, whose case has been highlighted. She has been convicted of blasphemy, which is punishable by as a capital offense. Have you confirmation of that?
Yes, well, it's interesting. The government has said this, but the case of Asia Bibi is currently in the Supreme Court. And so the actual outcome isn't actually in the government's hands right now. It looks like the protesters it's all about saving face for the protesters. Now, the government itself has said that it hasn't agreed to any of the protesters. There hasn't been any agreement between both sides. So it actually looks like both sides are trying to save face. Now, in terms of the amendments to the blasphemy law that the government also mentioned, that actually rests with Parliament, and so that also is not in the government's hands. So it certainly looks like this is a face-saving exercise.
And again, this comes in the context of that Easter Sunday bombing at a children's playground. How divided right now is Pakistan?
It seems to be very divided. The actual divide goes like this. The affluent and upper middle class people, mostly educated, they espouse to a very secular vision of Pakistan, one where religion and government don't mix. Whereas what we see in the lower income quartiles is more sympathy for an Islamist interpretation of governance. This is because of a couple of reasons. The first one is state-funded public education isn't really that good. And as a consequence, Islamic schools and madrasas fill the gap. Now, a lot of the militants and extremists, they emerge from these schools. The second reason is that the state court system is very slow and expensive, whereas the court system espoused by many extremists is swift, if brutal. And so as a consequence, we see a division along class lines when it comes to support for these things.
Rizwan Syed, many thanks for that update from Islamabad.